Live from Crystal City, Virginia, welcome to the 2011 Air Force Cycling Classic, proudly brought to you by the Boeing Company. The season is heating up, with top American and international pros all racing for the coveted Crystal Cup. More than 100 professional riders are here, and all eyes are on 21-year-old defending champion Jake Keogh, touted as the next great American sprinter. We're going to bring you right into the live action now, courtesy of our telecast sponsor, Northrop Grumman, as they race for the finish of the Crystal Cup, part of USA Cycling's national calendar of premier events. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this beautiful region just outside of our nation's capital. I'm Steve Schlanger, along with the Olympic gold medalist, Marty Notstein, and this is a race that has really grown in stature over the years, and now almost a decade and a half old. It brings some of the top cyclists in the sport here to Arlington, Virginia each summer.
Yeah, not only top domestic riders, but top international riders, and we have some strong powerhouse teams represented today.
Yeah, among the favorites, a lot of those are concentrated on one specific team, the United Healthcare Squad, presented by Maxxis.
United Healthcare Squad has been doing a great job all season long, and yesterday they finished first, third, fourth, and fifth. Actually, the first time we had a repeat winner in yesterday's event, Hilton Clark, so we expect him to be doing some good things today.
That was in the Clarendon Cup, a race that kicked off the weekend here in Arlington, Virginia. And as far as the course they're racing on today, it's 2 kilometers long, and while it's predominantly flat, that certainly does not mean it's easy.
It's definitely not easy. You know, actually this course has a lot of turns in it and a strong finishing straight, so we should see some good elbow-to-elbow, shoulder-to-shoulder sprinting going on.
Yeah, on a flat course, it usually means high speed, a lot of jockeying for position, and so far in the race that has already started, we've seen a lot of aggressive racing.
Yeah, the guys aren't holding anything back today. They're going for broke here, so to speak.
All right, as I noted, the race is already underway. They're not racing a specific distance. This is a timed event with the professional men racing for 90 minutes. That means that once they get out on the course, they've established the race after a few laps. They then determine how many more laps they will have to compete in order to get to that 90-minute time frame. So with the race already underway, let's take you out on the course and pick up the action here with 12 laps now left to go. And the riders coming back towards the start-finish line. And as you can see, riding in a large main field, no significant breakaways off the front of the field right now. We saw attacks early, but no rider really got more than 10 seconds. They've really been keeping them on a tight leash throughout the day.
Yeah, my thoughts are United Healthcare's want to keep this race together, try to bring it down to a field sprint, and let their sprinters shine at the end. But we're going to see things like this happening all day, where little groups are going to try to attack and get off the front to try to break up that United Healthcare strength in their team.
Now you're seeing a few riders jumping off the front here, but no serious response from the other riders, and that's an indication that they don't believe those are dangerous riders who could ride away and establish a big lead. They're patient enough to realize there's still a long way to go and there's time to bring these guys back.
Absolutely. It's a lot like a boxing match. They're all feeling each other out, and to get a breakaway established, to get a breakaway up the road, it takes a special group of riders to make not only the breakaway happy, but the peloton happy with what is happening up the road.
Looks like Nick Fry, the Janice Sutter home rider, who is out front of this 3-man group. You see the banner noting the Air Force Cycling Classic, sponsored by Boeing. That is the start-finish line. The riders coming through. And that'll take them down under a dozen laps now left to go. This is the large main field. Over 100 riders from half a dozen teams starting today's competition. Should say 15 different teams, half a dozen different countries represented in this race today. So it's very international, a lot of different teams, some marquee riders. Perfect ingredients for a terrific day of racing, and you see how aggressive some of these riders have been, and it's been this way from the start. These guys were attacking from the gun on the very first lap.
Yeah, they haven't sat still at all. You know, they're going to just keep launching attacks after attacks after attacks until something either gets established or we get late in the game here in a strong powerhouse team like a United Healthcare, like a Bissell, like a Mori Vita is going to get to the front, establish the pace, and set their sprinters up for the end. So it's a lot of action right now, and still a long way to go on a hot summer day. So it's going to be a trying test for these riders.
Marty, how are you reading this race? We're into the second half of the competition right now. We haven't seen anything really stay away of any sort of significance. How do you think this is going to come together without a break forming early? It doesn't seem like there's going to be one that's going to go down the road at this point.
No, I do not think a break is going to be established at this point. You're going to see small groups like this try to get a breakaway established, but I don't really think it's going to happen. I do think the powerhouse teams are going to want to set it up for a sprint for their strong riders. The course is difficult, but not difficult enough to break it up in large groups. But as you can see here, this is a rather large breakaway trying to get established. And if the right ingredients are there, that break will stick, but it's going to require a strong rider from United Healthcare. It's going to require a strong rider from Bissell. It's going to require representation from every team in the peloton for the guys to be happy to let this breakaway roll away and to go for the victory.
12 riders in that breakaway, 2 others trying to come across, but they only have a few seconds. You see how single file it is behind them. That's an indication of just how high the speed is right now and just how dangerous a large breakaway like that could be when you get that many guys who can go up the road together. All of a sudden, some of the favorites who are back in the field, that presents a danger for them.
It absolutely presents a danger. It's what you'll see are guys are getting antsy. Guys aren't going to sit still. And when there's a large breakaway, they all think they're going to miss the bus at that point. So they're putting their huge effort in to try to get into that breakaway, because the riders will also feel like that's a good, strong breakaway and that needs to be established, and there's great team representation. So they're doing everything they can to get into the front group at this point.
Okay, well, as we mentioned at the top, this is the tail end of a full weekend of racing just outside of our nation's capital. Yesterday it all began with the Clarendon Cup, and the women took to the roads just ahead of the men. Here's a look back at the women's race yesterday just outside of Arlington, Virginia. Saturday, Ladies' Day, so to speak, with the Air Force Cycling Classic and the Clarendon Cup, sponsored by Boeing, with the women taking to the streets in and around Arlington, Virginia for a 50-kilometer event on a very technical and demanding circuit.
Race number 3 of the Air Force Cycling Classic, the women's course.
With fast criteriums on twisting and very flat roads, that means that the speeds can be very high, which is always good for the spectators who get up close and personal with this style of racing. It's why it's so popular in the Washington, D.C. area as well as around the country, and because the spectators can have a little lunch, check out the action, and that includes this large field of some of the top women in the sport. Early on in the race, it was a battle for position. On a twisting course, you want to maintain your position near the front. Riders getting single file to take advantage of the slipstream of the rider in front of them, and also single file because the pace can be so high. Fans of all ages out for the Air Force Cycling Classic Clarendon Cup. First of back-to-back days of racing on a mid-June weekend. And the riders at this point with their attention starting to turn towards the sprint that would take place on the final lap. Coming through with 1 lap left to go. Riders starting to hit the accelerator. And because of the speed, some riders losing contact at this point off the tail end of the field. Spectators all making sure they had a prime viewing position to see how this one would shake out. And in the end, 3 riders contesting the sprint. Tibco's Joelle Newmanville would have just a little bit more to take victory. She had to work for it, barely had time to raise her hands off the bar. That's how much she was engaged by that sprint and how much she had to work for the win. Joelle Newmanville of the Tibco team gets the victory for the women in the 50K event. And that was yesterday, once again, the Clarendon Cup, the first of back-to-back days of racing in the Air Force Cycling Classic. Today, it's the Crystal Cup in Crystal City. A beautiful part of the Arlington, Virginia region, and you see the field here in this pro men's race coming back towards the start-finish line with 9 laps now left to go in this race on a 2-kilometer course. And you see that we have 2 riders just off the front. Things have been changing by the minute.
Yeah, the two riders off the front right now are Fred Rodriguez from Team Exergy and Johnny Clark, United Healthcare. Freddie Rodriguez, Fast Freddy as we call him, in the sport has been around quite a while. I believe he's 39 or 40 years old, a past or former U.S. Pro National Champion. So Freddie's got tons of experience. So for Freddie to be up the road with a strong rider could be a fairly dangerous situation for the rest of these riders in this field.
Some cloud cover is taken over, and that's got to be a relief for the riders. Earlier today, very sunny, hot, and humid. Still muggy, but any relief the riders can get, that is a huge break. Because it's only 90 minutes, but when you're racing at this intensity, you feel it pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's not like you're racing an easy hour and then the last half hour is hard. A bicycle race like this, especially on this type of course, is requiring an effort for a maximum hour and a half. You really never, ever turn the jets off, turn the engines off and rest. And if you do, it's purely only for 5, 10, 15 seconds at the most before somebody else launches an attack and you're back into the a bigger gear chasing.
14th year of the Air Force Cycling Classic here in Virginia, just across the Potomac River from Washington, D.C., taking place very near the Pentagon.
As you can see there in the background, you got a small group of 3 riders off the front, but you got United Healthcare, Team United Healthcare already setting up. They're putting all their riders on the front, trying to keep everything close. They don't want any breakaway to magically make up a 20, 30-second deficit, because at that point they're going to have a hard time on this type of course bringing them back. So you're going to see the blue and white crew of United Healthcare patrol the front and make sure that we don't have any riders slipping away. But you better believe, though, that teams like Team Type 1, Kelly Benefit Strategies, and the Danish national team are all going to be also hovering around the front. So this is going to start getting pretty interesting here at the end, see how it plays out.
All right, small 4-man breakaway, under 10 laps left to go here at the Air Force Cycling Classic, sponsored by Boeing. And while we have just a moment, Richard Fries, our sideline reporter here in Arlington, Virginia, had a chance to catch up with Boeing executive Dennis Muhlenberg.
Hey everybody, I'm here with Dennis Muhlenberg, who is the Executive Vice President of the Boeing Company and President and CEO of Boeing Defense, Space, and Security. And Dennis, I got to ask you, why did you guys get involved with the Air Force Cycling Classic?
Well, we're excited to be here today. It's great to be the presenting sponsor for this event, the Air Force Cycling Classic and Crystal Ride. It's a great opportunity for us to partner with the Air Force, partner with the community, and invest in the health and well-being of our employees.
And an event like this, what does it do for Boeing?
Well, it's a great way for us to show that the well-being and the health of our employees is important to us. It's a great way for us to partner with the Air Force on common objectives. And I think overall it's just a great event for the community.
You know, I know that the Wright brothers founded bicycles, and they were into planes too. Yeah. You guys, what do you get out of cycling? And you're pretty good cyclists, it looks like.
Well, I enjoy cycling. It's probably my favorite hobby. I try to do about 100 miles a week. And I think there's a nice combination of cycling and the aerospace industry, as you said.
Awesome. Well, let's go watch a bike race.
All right, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
That was fun.
Now, Boeing does so much for the armed forces and a tremendous sponsor here of this Air Force Cycling Classic, now in its 14th year. Always a highlight in the Washington, D.C. area. This weekend of racing that is so spectator-friendly, almost has a street carnival atmosphere, a lot of pageantry to it. The fans come out. There were kids' races earlier, some rides where just casual fans could come out and ride on the same course that the pros are on right now. It takes place along sidewalks that are lined with restaurants and shops. It really underscores the nature of cycling as such a social sport. You don't get this in basketball, football, some of the other big team sports, where you can get this up close and personal with the competitors while still engaging in such social behavior and having lunch while you're at it.
Absolutely. What better way to have lunch than watching a professional cycling race? But I was amazed at the turnout of people that were here in the early races. The kids' race was fantastic. To see hundreds of kids pedal around the same course that the pros get to do is just really special to me. So hopefully we encourage some of the youngsters to stay involved in cycling and maybe one day be competing and racing in this race as well.
All right, we have those 4 riders off the front, but there you see at the head of the main field, all of those riders in the blue and white, that's the United Healthcare team presented by Maxxis. They are the favorites because they have the deepest team of true sprinters, and they're pure and simple the best team here. And because of that, they're taking control of the field. They're bringing everybody to the front. At this point, with now just 7 laps to go, they don't want to break away to get too much time. They want to make sure they have things organized and under control so that they can set one of their own guys up for the sprint at the end.
That's absolutely right. And they don't want to risk anything. But not only being the strongest team, that also comes with a lot of power. You know, everyone else in the peloton is looking at United Healthcare and saying, hey, you're strong, you have 8 riders, you go to the front, you bring the breakaway back. Don't look at us, we're a small team, we're not as big and strong and as fast as you are. So with that comes some definite workload that as being part of the strongest team. So as you can tell right now, they're at the front. It's up to them now to bring this little breakaway back.
All right, so 4 guys just dangling off the front, seconds ahead of the field, led by United Healthcare, presented by Maxxis, the favorite today in the Air Force Cycling Classic, as the field heads back towards the start-finish line. Coming up on the final half-dozen laps of racing today near our nation's capital. Now the 2011 Air Force Cycling Classic is proudly brought to you by the Boeing Company.
We know why we're here. To give our warfighters every advantage. To deliver technologies that anticipate the future today.
And help protect America everywhere, from the battle space to cyberspace. Around the globe, the people of Boeing are working together to give our best for America's best.
That's why we're here.
This is Titan 1-4. No signs of life.
Titan 1-4, hold your position.
What do you got?
Unmanned aircraft is identifying enemy sniper.
Copy that. Let's move. Thanks, Reaper 1-1. We got it from here. Sensors coming off target.
Learn more at airforce.com.
Steve Schlanger back with Marty Notstein, the 2011 Air Force Cycling Classic in Arlington, Virginia. This is the front of the race with 6 laps now left to go in this 90-minute event on a 2-kilometer course. And again, we noted the team in the blue and white at the front, United Healthcare, presented by Maxxis. They have some of the marquee names like our defending champion from last year, Jake Keogh, yesterday's winner of the Clarendon Cup, Hilton Clark, who's wearing number 1, his younger brother Johnny Clark, also sprinter Robert Forrester, Carl Menzies, Andrew Pinfold, Roy Van Poppel. They have so many strong individual riders, but Marty, what also makes them very dangerous and one of the favorites is the fact that they have 8 riders here. They have more riders in their team than some other teams do who only have maybe 3 or 4 riders. So you take the strength in numbers, that's a huge advantage to have more riders on your team at this race than some other squads.
Absolutely. It's good to have friends out there. And when you have also a lot of good riders like United Healthcare, strength in numbers. But I would expect teams like Team Type 1, Kelly Benefits, Bissell, Pure Black, and Jameis might have 4 or 5 riders. They'll get enough strength up there and try to battle with United Healthcare. But definitely having a large team on hand, especially a strong team like United Healthcare, does favor you in the long run.
All right, 3 other riders trying to escape off the front, and a short while ago we showed you the women's action from the Clarendon Cup yesterday here in our nation's capital region. The men raced after the ladies, and this is how things unfolded for the pro men yesterday here in the DC region. The 14th edition of the Clarendon Cup kicked off on Saturday under partly sunny skies, but in hot and muggy conditions for the peloton of over 100 riders from 6 different nations. They would take to the streets in and around Arlington, Virginia on a very fast and technical course, 100 kilometers in all, in one of America's most prestigious professional races. And United Healthcare, one of the deepest and most talented teams in the entire field, would be represented at the front, taking control early on. But this is not just about the riders. This is a very spectator-friendly event. There's a lot of pageantry, socializing, and of course eating that goes on the sidewalks that line the course. Where else do you get something like that so close to a prestigious sporting event? But it wasn't just about the atmosphere and the spectacle of competitive racing. It was about the crashes as well. This one occurred early on. One of the hazards that you face in a very fast competition like this, about half a dozen riders hitting the deck and the rest of the field just avoiding on the left-hand side of the barriers. So as they move past the crash, they would eventually look to set things up for a race-ending sprint. 3 riders at this point had lapped the field, and no surprise that 2 of those riders were from United Healthcare, and that would mean that Hilton Clark, one of those United Healthcare riders, would come across the line as the winner for the 2nd year in a row. And then with the podium presentations that would follow, David Hollisey was highlighted as being the top fundraiser, bringing in just over $2,000. And amongst the riders, Patrick Marin of Amore Vita was the most courageous rider on the day. But the podium would feature the Aussie Hilton Clark as the top man on the top step. The Aussie Hilton Clark, the race's first ever back-to-back champion, as Clark wins the Clarendon Cup for the 2nd year in a row.
Yeah, well, I guess we didn't really make the race too exciting at the start by me and a teammate and one other lapping the field, and we just really tried to shut the race down after that and slow it down and put all the riders on the front and just protect me the rest of the race. But it's not an easy task to do, to ride the rest of the 80 kilometres, the team on the front, but they just did a remarkable job, and I'm happy to finish the job off for the team.
So Hilton Clark repeated his Clarendon Cup win yesterday from 1 year ago. Will his teammate Jake Keogh do the same here in the Crystal Cup on this Sunday in Arlington, Virginia? We're coming down to the final 5 laps as the field is coming through the start-finish line area. Alistair Ratliff of the BikeReg.com Cannondale team, the one rider just off the front. And the peloton here still being controlled by United Healthcare, presented by Maxxis. How good is this team last year? At this Crystal Cup race, they swept all 3 podium spots. They took the top 3 in the race, and now this year, 1 year later, they say that they're deeper than they have ever been in their sprinter squad. That's pretty scary.
Yeah, they had a great offseason. They really got some great riders on board for that team, and it is a well-funded team. It's a well-respected team. But as I said before, a lot of responsibility comes on that team. When you wear colors of a top-notch team like that, it's up to that team now to require to bring everything back, lead out the sprint, do the majority of the work. But I guess it's not that bad when you have all the horsepower like they have.
Well, if you're one of those other teams not named United Healthcare, presented by Maxxis, if you have less riders, not as high-profile a rider, what do you do to try and upset their dominance? What can you do to try and snatch a victory?
I'll tell you, you really got to feed off of that team and capitalize on their mistakes. And the bike race is long, so they will make mistakes during the race. But I would put the ball in their hands, and most of the other teams should be keying off of them, which means following United Healthcare, getting behind their top sprinters, and then trying to just save a little energy and come by them at the end. And some of the smart riders, guys like Freddie Rodriguez and Ben Kirsten and Kyle Walmsley and Alexi Schmidt from Team Type 1, they're pretty darn crafty riders, and they will be the ones that will sneak into that United Healthcare lineup, sneak into that train, and try to take their top sprinters out of their game, off the wheel, and try to get in their way, so to speak, for the sprint.
Working our way towards the finish of the Air Force Cycling Classic weekend of racing, and it's sponsored by the United States Air Force. The Air Force Cycling Classic weekend riding and racing, sponsored by the United States Air Force.
This is Titan 1-4. No signs of life.
Titan 1-4, hold your position.
What do you got?
Unmanned aircraft is identifying enemy sniper.
Copy that. Let's move. Thanks, Reaper 1-1. We got it from here. Sensors coming off target.
Learn more at airforce.com.
We know why we're here. To give our warfighters every advantage. To deliver technologies that anticipate the future today.
and help protect America everywhere, from the battle space to cyberspace. Around the globe, the people of Boeing are working together to give our best for America's best.
That's why we're here.
We return to the back end of the field at the 2011 Air Force Cycling Classic in Arlington, Virginia. Just across the Potomac River from Washington, D.C., all the monuments, and the one monument that the riders pass in the shadow of today is the Pentagon. And now we're looking at the front end of the race. Attack still trying to launch off the front, but no one really getting much rope to work with. That is the United Healthcare presented by Max's team in the blue and white. They're patrolling everything on the front and making sure things stay organized and well within check here as we're coming down to the final 4 laps.
Yeah, it's kind of like sharks and minnows right now. And the rider off the front, Alistair Radcliffe from BikeReg.com, Cannondale, he's the minnow and the peloton is a shark. So they're going to leave him out there kind of as a setup for engaging the final few laps in the sprint, and I'd expect them to reel him back in, and then somebody else will probably attack, but United Healthcare looks like they have complete control of this race, and which means it's going to probably come down to a sprint. Coming out, making that final right turn on Crystal and 700 meters to go to the finish line is going to be some fantastic action.
Now when they come up to the start-finish line in just a moment, that'll be 3 laps left to ride, so that's 6 kilometers remaining here in the Crystal Cup.
6 kilometers goes by really quick with these professional riders, and if they decide to hit the gas and go full gas, this race is going to get blown apart pretty quick. Oh, it looks like we had an accident back there.
We did have a crash. You can see it just on the left-hand side of the screen happening near the back of the field. Just caught a slight glimpse of it, and it's the first crash we've seen so far today.
Yeah, unfortunately, crashes are part of cycling, and they usually happen in just about every race. What will happen, though, is guys are going to start paying a lot more attention now. Guys are getting tired, they drop their heads, they overlap wheels, and they make mistakes and usually cause crashes. And that's why it's also very important to ride the front of the race. And the top teams are going to be located towards the front of the peloton at this point because they do not want to risk anything. You got to finish to place.
Most of those crashes happen from the middle of the field on back, so if you stay near the front, chances are you're going to keep yourself out of danger.
Yeah, you always try to protect yourself, keep your teammates around you, because when the crashes do happen, as you can tell, there's not a whole lot of real estate out there, and these riders are riding shoulder to shoulder, elbow to elbow, and it just takes one little slip of the wheel and you have 4 or 5 guys down on the ground.
See the fans lining the barricades. Good crowd on a warm, sunny Sunday afternoon.
A lot of the positioning is going to start taking place right now. With 3 to go, it's going to be very, very difficult for the riders who are located in the back of the peloton to try to charge their way up. Not only is it going to require a lot of energy to get to the front, but then you're also going to have to battle with the top teams for that real estate that's located up there.
Now when a team rides at the front and keeps the pace very high, the other thing that does, it discourages attacks from other teams. It doesn't let other riders come forward and punch it, trying to get away. If you're keeping the race speed high at the front, other guys are sometimes fighting to hang on.
You know, you usually ride at a pace that's very uncomfortable for everybody. Comfortable to stay in the front, but uncomfortable for anyone else to try to take a move and try to go faster. So that's exactly what United Healthcare is doing. They've been in this situation many, many, many times, as well as a lot of the sprinters that are located right behind them, the riders from Team Type 1, Bissell, and Jameis. These guys are also setting up. But as you can tell, the riders from United Healthcare all in a single file, and then it kind of flares out back there. That's where a lot of the shoving and pushing is going on. That's where cycling is a full contact sport.
And riders riding in a single file line, not only because the speed gets high, but also taking advantage of the draft, the slipstream of the rider in front of them.
You save a lot of energy following wheels out there, and that rider in the front right there is breaking the wind for everybody else. So everybody else is pedaling at about 30% less energy than the riders in the front.
Well, on a course like this, where you're doing laps, and in this case, right around 30 laps altogether today, you get plenty of opportunities to see the start-finish area. So with a team that has a lot of good sprinters, and they understand the craft of leading out a sprint like United Healthcare presented by Maxis, when you can see that run into the finish this many times, that helps you exponentially because there's no surprises waiting for you at the finish.
There's definitely no surprises, and each rider will have a specific task to do. So the first rider in this what we call lead-out train will take it to maybe 1,000 meters to the finish. The second rider will take over, and he might go to 700 meters. The third rider to 500 meters. So you have benchmarks out there on where you need to be on certain parts of the course and at what power. So you going through this course several times helps them gauge all of that.
This is a very technical course, predominantly flat, a lot of tight turns, and the final turn is a 180-degree turn, and then it's 700 meters from that point to the finish line, and it's largely straight. They're coming down that straight right now. It's very flat, wide, and this will be 2 laps now left to go.
2 laps to go, so you're going to see a lot of the top riders starting to position themselves, get on a good wheel they're comfortable with, getting ready for the sprint. But this is when you are throwing your last final jabs, getting into position, because these are the money laps at the end. These are what the riders are racing for, and for all the prestige. You're going to see some amazing things happening here, and riders who are going to take chances, but will be worth the reward.
As we saw there, you get a sense of just how wide open that road is leading into the finish, how straight for how long. 700 meters is over half a kilometer, so there's plenty of time once they come out of that final tight turn for the sprinters to really get things organized. There's plenty of road to work with, and that sets things up for a textbook type of field sprint.
Yes, and it's a long sprint, so there's going to be a lot of things happening. And it's also a long sprint like this could also be very difficult to gauge, because if you go too long and you go too fast, you're going to run out of energy, and maybe one of the lesser teams, maybe one of the other riders that are keying off United Healthcare will be able to overtake them for the victory.
And when you have more riders like a United Healthcare, that's an advantage you have, because you just use up guys one by one, and you time it so that that last guy drops off the final rider with about 200 meters to go, maybe 150, and then that way he can go full gas all the way to the line, because when you're on that last lap setting up for the sprint, you only go all out for so long.
Absolutely, and these riders are going to be starting to peel off, start sacrificing themselves for their top sprinters. So you're going to see some riders, and probably United Healthcare come down to the last 700 meters with maybe only 5 riders left on their squad.
Now again, Jake Keogh, number 2 for United Healthcare, presented by Maxxis. He is the defending champion of this race. Hilton Clark, who wears bib number 1, he won yesterday in the Clarendon Cup for the 2nd year in a row. But Robert Forrester, who wears number 4, is a top sprinter from the international ranks. Carl Menzies, Andrew Pinfold, Boy Van Poppel, those guys have also won some prestigious races. So they have a lot of guys who could win this race in their own right, but today likely working for one of the top guys like a Jake Keogh or a Hilton Clark.
Absolutely, they're going to be setting up their top sprinters, but we also can't forget a rider like Freddie Rodriguez or a Ben Kirsten or a Jackie Symes or Kyle Walmsley or Shane Klein from Team Bissell. These riders are also very, very smart and very strong and been in this position many times. So they're going to get on the good wheel, and they're also going to try to break up that United Healthcare train.
All right, you may hear the bell. That means 1 lap left to go. 2 kilometers to decide the Crystal Club here at the Air Force Cycling Classic.
Looks like Team Type 1 is set up right behind United Healthcare, and they have some very strong riders, including Alexei Schmidt from Russia, who finished 6th yesterday. So I'm sure he's looking at some redemption from yesterday's results.
Aldo Ilesic is the other Team Type 1 rider. He's the first rider not from United Healthcare, presented by Maxxis, at the front of the field. So you have half a dozen riders from United Healthcare, then Aldo Ilesic of Team Type 1, his teammate Alexei Schmidt behind him, and then Freddie Rodriguez of Team Exergy, followed by Reed Mumford of Kelly Benefit Strategies. Yeah. But in terms of setting up for United Healthcare, Jake Keogh was the last man in the United Healthcare line. Hilton Clark just ahead of him, an indication that they're probably looking to set up Keogh for the win once again this year.
Yes, and this rider right here in the front, he's sacrificing, he's giving it everything he can to keep his sprinters from not having to fight or waste energy against the other guys. As you saw, he just pulled out of the way, but you better believe the riders from Team Type 1 and the fast Freddie Rodriguez are setting it up and counting on United Healthcare to do a long sprint, burn their matches so they can capitalize on this victory.
The fight for the wheels of the United Healthcare team. They will have to launch off that squad if they have any hope of trying to upset the strongest team in the peloton here today.
They have 5 riders left at the front, actually 6 riders, which is a lot more than I thought they'd have left at this point. But you're seeing Team Type 1 shoot on the inside. They're going to try to break their line up. Here we had a rider down.
A rider crashing on the left-hand side near the barriers. As the race continues up front, no one has been able to work inside of the United Healthcare train. They've been trying on the left-hand side, the right-hand side, but the speed has been just too high. Now here comes a rider up the left. Looks like Team Type 1.
Yeah, Team Type 1 and Freddie Rodriguez are putting the pressure on United Healthcare here at the end. But United Healthcare has it lined up. Looks like Hilton. Oh, there's some shoving going on back there. Hilton Clark and Team Type 1 rider are going to try to battle this out for the end.
And now here comes the sprint into the final few hundred meters towards the finish line. United Healthcare presented by Maxxis, setting it up at the sprint. And they come to the line, 3 across, and it looks like it's going to be Jake Keogh once again getting the win. Back-to-back victories the last 2 years in the Crystal Cup for Jake Keogh and United Healthcare presented by Maxxis.
What a fantastic sprint. United Healthcare did a picture-perfect sprint setup by getting their strongest guys left at the end to only go the last 200 meters on their own. And kudos to Team Type 1 and Aldo Ilesic with a great finish as well.
Freddie Rodriguez was there, Aldo Ilesic, Carlos Alzate of Team Exergy, Luke Keogh of Mountain Khakis was also in the mix. But once again, we talked about it throughout the telecast. Jake Keogh, the defending champion from last year, had so much support from that United Healthcare team sitting at the back of the train at the front of the field for so long, and then launched by Hilton Clark right at the end.
As you can see, the United Healthcare riders, they're peeling off. They're getting out of the way for their top sprinters at this point, and you can see the riders behind them who are just battling. Just look at the incredible strength of these riders and how they're throwing their bikes left and right, trying to get every last ounce of energy out of their legs, battling it to the line.
Look at how many United Healthcare presented by Maxxis had there at the end. How many guys were still strong enough. So Jake Keogh gets the win, but check this out. For the second year in a row, United Healthcare presented by Maxxis sweeps the podium with the top 3. Jake Keogh, Hilton Clark, and Robert Forster.
A fantastic showing by that team. And that just goes to show you that they've been having great results all season long. They practiced that move, they practiced the sprint setups, and they had control of the race really with the last 6 or 7 laps to go. So great job by United Healthcare, great job by Team Type 1 and the rest of the riders out there.
Now the pressure was on them and they delivered.
Yeah, that's always one of the hardest things is when you're called, when your numbers are called and you're expected to win, is actually come through for the victory. But what could I say? To come out of that last turn with 6 riders left, the odds-on favorite was United Healthcare. It wasn't looking very favorable for the rest of the team.
For the second year in a row, they sweep the podium here at the Crystal Cup, and also for the second year in succession, they get back-to-back wins in the Clarendon Cup and the Crystal Cup. So, taking quite a liking to the Air Force Cycling Classic here in Arlington, Virginia.
And as an athlete, you tend to like certain races. And it's funny because when you get the team races for the year and you know what rides you race well on, what races you race well on, and what other races you don't race well on. And a good team director will send his top squad to certain events. And I'm sure the team director of United Healthcare put his A squad ready for this race.
So Keogh wins, followed by Clark and Forrester to complete the podium sweep for United Healthcare presented by Maxxis. And then Team Type 1's Aldo Ilesic finishes 4th. United Healthcare's Carl Menzies rounds out the top 5. So United Healthcare with 4 of the top 5 placings here today at the Crystal Cup. Well, we saw early in the race that other teams were working at the front, guys trying to get in a breakaway, and the reason the racing was so aggressive from the very first lap is because other teams knew this was going to happen. They knew United Healthcare would come to the front, and they didn't want it to come down to a sprint like that. Their best chance was to get in a breakaway and have that stay clear the entire day.
Absolutely. They wanted it to have an opposite finale then United Healthcare won it. So their only shot was to break it up, to make sure there was a breakaway, to get some of their riders off to the front. And it's really a game of numbers. And it's tough to beat a team when you have 8 strong riders like United Healthcare controlling the last 6 laps of the race. I would have expected a team like Bissell or Fly V or even the Danish national team or Mori Vita to try to battle United Healthcare a little more and maybe be a bit more aggressive during the race. But needless to say, United Healthcare did exactly what they came here to do, and that was sweep the podium.
Now, again, it illustrates how competitive the racing was today. That a breakaway never got more than about 10 seconds at any one point in a 90-minute race. And typically, you will see a break, sometimes get a couple of minutes. So to only get 10 seconds, many different riders from several different teams trying throughout the day, but each and every time they were brought back and never got much leash to work with at all.
No, they never let anybody get out of sight and would only tease them with a 10 or 15 second breakaway at the absolute most and then get back to the front and bring them back. So textbook perfect race for United Healthcare. Fantastic result for them. Jay Keogh repeating his victory here last year. Hilton Clark, a great rider as well, back on the podium from yesterday's Clarendon Cup. And Robert Forster, who I believe is wanting a little redemption after a disappointing ride in the Philadelphia U.S. Actually, what used to be the U.S. Professional Championship. So great ride by all those riders.
Everybody knows it is the Philly race.
It is now the Philly race, yes.
All right, so Jake Keogh wins the Crystal Cup, part of the Air Force Cycling Classic for the 2nd year in a row here in Arlington, Virginia, on a muggy Sunday afternoon just outside of the nation's capital. Northrop Grumman is pleased to sponsor this live telecast of the Air Force Cycling Classic. We hope to talk with Jake Keogh, our winner, momentarily here as the Air Force Cycling Classic starts to wind down. Tremendous weekend of racing, starting with the Clarendon Cup yesterday and the Crystal Cup today. The Air Force Cycling Classic in its 14th year. This Crystal Cup added 4 years ago to the menu. Yesterday's race, 100 kilometers over a 1 kilometer course. Today, just about a 90-minute race on a 2K circuit. So back-to-back days of very fast, hard racing in hot and muggy conditions. This is where that fitness and all the work you do in the off-season and the early spring season really pays off.
Yeah, these guys are well-trained for this type of race. And, unfortunately, it was a little bit muggy, which makes it hard for some riders. But if you're well-hydrated and you're trained for it exactly like you said, it's usually one that you'll be able to survive very, very easily.
All right, well, it's not just these professional races that make up the Air Force Cycling Classic, so many other events. We noted earlier there was a kids ride, a social ride of casual riders, and there's General Norton Schwartz, the Air Force Chief of Staff, sending out one of the other ancillary rides in conjunction with the Air Force Cycling Classic. Now 1,500 riders taking part in this particular ride. And again, one of the unique aspects of a sport like this and an event such as the Air Force Cycling Classic, you can get the casual fan, a recreational rider, someone with even the mildest of interests in the sport. They can come out and compete on the same field as the pros. Now they took part in this event on an 8-mile loop. And cycling, maybe more so than a lot of other sports, so participatory. Golf is that way, tennis to some degree, but if you're a cycling fan, chances are you have a bike, you go out, ride with a Sunday group, maybe a Tuesday evening crit sort of competition. Chances are you're heavily invested in the sport, not just as a spectator, but as a participant. And that's what these events do extremely well. They not only showcase the best athletes in terms of the men's and women's pro riders, but they let the casual fans also become a part of the event too.
No, it's absolutely right. I mean, 1,500 people to take part in that ride is absolutely phenomenal, so it's great to see that.
All right, so that was earlier. And now Richard Freeze is with our race winner for the second year in a row, Jake Keogh of United Healthcare, presented by Maxxis.
Hey, I'm here with Jake Keogh, and Jake, we meet again. What is it about this Crystal City course and this United Healthcare team that so has Crystal City dialed in?
Well, I think it's this weekend in general. You know, yesterday Hilton won for the second time at the Clarendon Cup, and today in Crystal City, you know, it's a nice day. The crowds are good. And this sprint really suits our team. You know, we have 3 really strong sprinters. And, you know, the lead out went to perfection. The whole team rode perfectly and, it, you know, delivered us to the win.
I just have to ask you, here you are, 21 years of age. You're the next great superstar sprinter, and you've got Fred Rodriguez coming up on your left side, fighting for that wheel of yours. Does it ever intimidate you?
I don't know if it's intimidating. You know, on our team we have a lot of top guys like Fred Rodriguez. It's more of a respect thing. You know, they're racing with guys that, you know, I've looked up to. You know, same thing with the guys on our team, Robert Forster, Hilton Clark, Carl Menzies. The guys are all top-level riders. So I think I have a great deal of respect for them, and, you know, sprinting against them is a good honor.
You know, they say being a field sprinter like you are is a little bit like being a soldier. You're either bored or terrified. You've been eating and drinking a lot the last 2 days, but when you have to go to work, how hard is it to follow that blue train?
Oh, this is the hardest part of the race. That's what Hilton and I always say. We got guys doing the lead out that, you know, we're riding behind going, oh, I hope I can just hold the wheel, let alone do a sprint. All the guys are so strong, and when they go, we go so hard that, you know, everyone's just fighting to hold the wheel until the last 50 meters.
All right, Jake Keogh, good luck with the rest of your season, and congratulations on another win in Crystal City. Back to you guys.
Thanks to everyone.
All right, thanks, guys. And, you know, it goes to show, again, how good that team is, because they swept the podium for the second year in a row, and Jake Keogh gets the win for the second year in succession. But any one of about 3 riders from that team could have legitimately won this race. They were that strong, but they designated Keogh as their leader, their top sprinter for today, so they worked for him to deliver him the victory when those other guys could have won as well.
Absolutely, and it's funny to hear Jake talk because he's right. The hardest part of the race is sometimes following your strong lead-out train, and his number was called today, and he was a man that was told, we're going to try to get you to win. And a lot of times you do not want to leave your team down, but sometimes, you know, you bite that handlebar and coming out of the last turn thinking, I cannot believe my teammates are going this fast. So great for Jake to hang tough and to come through for his team, which is very important.
Also has to be a very nervous time for a rider like Keogh because, you know, everybody realizes it's going to be up to you to deliver. Your team is working that hard. You're stressed trying to hold the wheel, and you know that your hard work, your true test, hasn't even started yet. It's to come at the end.
Yeah, and your teammates are counting on you. So, you know, it's tough to look them in the eye at the end of a race when your number was called and you cannot come through for them. But having a team like United Healthcare makes his job a lot easier. Believe me, I've been in that situation. And when you have riders like the quality of United Healthcare, you know, they make it as easy as possible for a rider like Jake Keogh, although it is not difficult. Sometimes, as he said, the hardest part is just keeping up with your teammates at that point.
Now some of the fans gathering around the stage that's near the start-finish line of the Air Force Cycling Classic, watching the announcements of the podium placements and some of the awards that are given out to not 3, but some of the other riders in the competition today.
This is what you do all the hard work for. To stand on top of that podium, to receive the winner's jersey or the gold medal is what it's all about, and to celebrate with your teammates is just a fantastic experience. It's what every rider in that podium, in the race today, wanted to experience.
Fabulous crowds all weekend, but really no surprise. The Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia area, a very robust cycling region. Arlington itself has some 86 miles of bike trails, so they encourage the sport from the casual rider to the competitive one. A lot of people get out and ride their bikes here in the Washington, D.C., Arlington, Virginia area. We saw that earlier with some of the casual rides, the kids' rides. And they all stayed to watch the pro men's race, and now the women's race is coming up shortly here in Arlington.
The Air Force Cycling Classic has always been one of the crown jewel events on the East Coast racing scene. So to see it grow tremendously over the last couple of years and have incredible riders like Jake Keogh and Hilton Clark and Carl Menzies and Alexi Schmidt and Freddie Rodriguez here competing just shows you that, you know, this area is a hotbed of cycling.
And it's nothing new, the high-profile stature of this weekend of racing. You've had guys like Levi Leipheimer, Tyler Farah, George Hincapie, Dave Zabriskie, Andy Schleck. Some of the marquee names of the sport on a global scale, they have raced here at this Air Force Cycling Classic over the years.
Absolutely, and this race always brings the best out of everybody else. So when you do get your racing calendar in the beginning of the year, you put a circle around this one as one that you want to key in on, one that you want to be successful at. So riders like a George Hincapie and Levi Leipheimer who have been here just shows you that this race is for the top guys in the world purely.
I heard at one point they even dragged one Marty Notstein to this race.
Yes,
and you competed here on more than one occasion.
I have. I've raced here, I think 3 or 4 times. You know, I've raced so much I don't remember,
sure.
but 3 or 4 times. Never won the race, but been top 5 several times. But I've been part of winning teams, just like Jay Keogh has with the Team Navigators throughout my career, and also found myself on the ground a few times in this race. But this has always been one of my favorite events. Not only because the race is difficult and there are other great champions out there racing with you, but it's the whole atmosphere, the whole weekend of cycling-themed events is just really fantastic right here.
Cyclists can sometimes feel like they're living in a bubble with the lifestyle that they lead. So it really does make a difference to have the atmosphere that surrounds the race, from the neighborhoods to the fans to the interaction and that social element that we've highlighted. It really does make a difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Cycling can be a very lonely sport when you're out there training 5-6 hours by yourself every single day. So to get in front of thousands of screaming fans on a closed-loop course like this, you know, it really charges you up and makes you want to dig extremely deep to try to make them even cheer louder. I tell people all the time, the louder you cheer, the faster we'll go, so let's hear it. But great crowds here all weekend.
Now some of the biggest crowds have been the kids who have come out to see the race, and the kids competition earlier, one of the most well-attended kids events that I've ever seen. They had a lot of the youngsters coming out, and now again, that certainly bodes well for the future of the sport when you get that sort of participation in an area that has the rich cycling history like this Washington, D.C. area. You know that the future is bright.
Yeah, my hat's off to the Arlington area here. Introducing kids to the sport of cycling is just fantastic. Cycling isn't like most stick and ball sports where you can pick up a manual or go to the bookstore and find out how I go from first starting to being a professional. Cycling, you kind of have to know people and get introduced to the sport. So you'll see those hundreds of kids come out here and pedal around here is just fantastic. I also came through a community cycling program, much like what we saw out here today, and that's how I was introduced to the sport. So hopefully, as I said, maybe in 10, 15 years from now, we'll have more of these kids out here racing their bicycles.
Plus, I think the kids see the sort of traffic their parents deal with in the Beltway here every single day on the way to and from work, and they say, no, we're not going for that. We're going to ride our bikes everywhere we need to go.
That wouldn't be such a bad thing.
So finishing up with the men's awards, and now the women's race about to begin here.
Women's cycling has really increased dramatically in the United States over the last couple of years, and we've seen some great riders, great American riders out representing the U.S. in world and Olympic championship types events. So, and myself particularly, I've seen some great women's cycling over the last couple of years. So I expect the women's event to be just as exciting as the men's event. The speeds may not be the same, but the excitement will definitely be the same.
Now we're going to see the beginning of the women's race. We're not going to follow it through to its conclusion, but we will see the start, which is coming up momentarily.
But I give everyone a great opportunity to come down and watch some live cycling if you're watching it at home, to come down here and watch the professional women compete.
Now, just like the men's race featured some of the top sprinters in the men's sport, same goes for the ladies. And Hilton Clark, of course, was the man who was the last lead-out man for Jake Keogh, today's winner. And Hilton Clark now standing by with Richard Freeze. Richard.
Hey, guys, thanks for throwing it to me. I just want to congratulate Hilton Clark. We have a movie called Groundhog's Day where it's the same thing over and over. Last year you win up in Clarendon, and then Jake Keogh wins here. Do you ever think like you're in a bad dream here, or is this a good dream?
Oh, this area is great for me. I've always been successful here, and the team, they've got it really well drilled now, so I don't have to worry, and there's no panic in our team, and they're very calm come the finish, and yeah, it's just like last year.
Boy, I got to hand it to you as a real cycling fan. You know, a lot of people give Jake and you all the kudos, but Adrian Hejavari and Boyvon Popple and your younger brother really just emptied themselves. How important was that to this win today?
Yeah, well, the selflessness of our team, you can see it out there. And Adrian, for me, yesterday did the ride of the day. He was the driving force for us to lap the field. And you know, the pressure's on me once we lap the field, but he was really the driving force. And today you can see that the field's already shattered by the time those guys are gone. So we just got to finish off the work, and they're doing just as good a work as us.
For these fans that came out, you know, tens of thousands of people watching and cheering for you, you know, they love to watch the Tour de France, but they should really know that you're a great veteran pro rider, but boy, that Jake Keogh, how good is Jake Keogh going to be in this sport at just 21? He's already proving to be spectacular.
Yeah, well, Robert Foster on our team third today, he was doing the Tour de France last year, and he got some top fives, and his quality, and Jake's going past the both of us pretty quickly. So Jake is going very quick, and he's very young still, and he's really one of the next American up-and-coming sprinters.
You know, I got to ask you, you've got a younger brother, Johnny. He's got 4 younger brothers. Yep. You ever talk to him about brotherly power?
Well, yeah, like I've noticed already that the other Keogh brothers are right there in the sprint as well. So, you know, it's the same. But for me as well, having my brother, he really dictates things at the front of our train, and I know exactly what he's doing. We've ridden together all our lives, so it's great to have him part of the lead out to really dictate what we're doing.
Well, Hilton Clark, congratulations. Another great win. We hope you come back. Phenomenal job. Back to you guys.
Hilton Clark getting the win 2 years in a row in the Clarendon Cup and getting second for the second year in a row here in the Crystal Cup for this United Healthcare presented by Maxis team. As the women's race is to start here in Crystal City. They're doing what is known as the race call-ups now, bringing some of the marquee women's riders up to the front, giving the fans a chance to acknowledge them before the race begins. I just heard Joelle Newmanville. As you saw earlier in our telecast, she was the winner in the sprint yesterday in the women's edition of the Clarendon Cup. Women's cycling, a sport that continues to grow in the U.S. as well. And really some top quality talent. I think the depth of women's racing is maybe at its greatest right now from I don't know how long it's been.
Yeah, America's really had a great tradition in women's cycling. We've had several Olympic medalists in the women's field as well as world champions in the women's field for many years back. So women's cycling's got a great tradition in the United States. But what you're going to see today is there's a lot more internationals involved than there have been in the past. So cycling's growing as a sport globally, and this is just proof in it with the size of this women's field.
And it's really that depth and that international flavor that makes the sport as rich, competitive, and as exciting as it can be. Not when you have one nation or one team that tends to dominate.
Absolutely. Cycling is fantastic as far as excitement goes, and to see riders, men or women, go by you at 45-plus miles per hour, all within an arm's reach away, just really makes it extra special. And the women also, race very aggressively, race same team tactics as the men. They try to do the exact same thing, and this should be a fantastic event.
Well, it all started yesterday with the Clarendon Cup, which got its own start way back in 1998, the Crystal Cup, which is what we've been focused on today. That started in 2007, and then they came together into one weekend of racing just a couple of years ago in 2009. So they were separate events, but they made them part of one larger weekend of competition here in mid-June just a few years ago, and now it represents one of the staples of summer sports here in the Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia area. Every mid-June, the Clarendon Cup, the Crystal Cup really team up in this Air Force Cycling Classic to give the fans here who know they're cycling, to give them a quality weekend of racing competition to come out, be a part of, and watch. Now in the men's race, the start was fast and furious. We'll see if the same is for the ladies as they get set to take off. Now it's been a fun weekend of racing in the Washington, D.C. area. The kids took to the streets as part of the Air Force Cycling Classic. bumping bars, rubbing elbows, just like the pros. Cycling such a social and interactive sport, even at a young age. And then in the men's race, the sprint at the end, controlled and dominated by United Healthcare, presented by Maxis for the second year in a row. That team sweeps the podium. Jake Keogh once again the winner. And now for Marty Notstein, I'm Steve Schlanger. Thanks for joining us, and so long from Arlington, Virginia.